Hey everybody, this is Rabbit, welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be taking a viewer suggestion and doing a VOD review of some of my own gameplay. While I do generally prefer to offer you guys feedback where possible, I have no problem showing some of my own clips, so here's a video of a rather interesting and somewhat close game. Now for this game we have Single Cap Abandoned Town. Single Cap Abandoned Town is fairly interesting because the capture point is fairly close range and fairly brawly. There are some flank routes to the north and the south, however they can be a little difficult to exploit without getting caught in a weird line of sight. So on the whole, I do kind of favor just staying generally in the middle because it gives you a lot of opportunities to make big plays, whereas the sight lines on the north and south can leave you a little bit exposed. So the lineup is French 7-7, and honestly there's not a lot of vehicles at 7-7 that you can really go wrong with for France. We do happen to have the premium Somwa SM, and of course the EBR, which is an old event vehicle. However, you could very well substitute these for tech tree vehicles like the AMX 50 Sorbase and the AML 90 and do perfectly fine, which does bring up the issue that my French pronunciations are fairly atrocious, so please forgive that if you are a native French speaker. Obviously, out of all of the options, the question is why did I pick these specific vehicles? The Somwa SM is a great brawler. I like the AMX 50 as a pseudo brawler and mobile medium tank. The EBR is incredibly good on flat maps with agreeable terrain because it can get to position very fast. And of course the AMX 13 is a great light tank on maps that don't necessarily have as agreeable terrain. The AMX 10P is the most questionable, but France doesn't really have a good anti-air around this battle rating, so it's either that or the dual 20mm truck, and I kind of prefer this one if I'm being honest. That being said, you can kind of mix and match a lot of the French 7-7 like the Lorraine 40T, the Sorbase, the AML 90, etc, and still get a very decent lineup. France at 7-7 is generally quite capable. In fact, it's capable enough that you'll see all these vehicles have talismans on it because I use this to grind out basically the entire French tech tree outside of the Leclercs and the Ito. For CAS, I have the Berugan as it has really good flight performance for looping, diving, and generally doing the types of maneuvers you want to do in a ground RB engagement, and also has some reasonably flexible loadouts, although it does have a dual drop for the bombs. Individuals would obviously be better. The H-34 is not really the greatest, but it is an early helicopter, and a lot of anti-air at this battle rating have a lot of trouble contesting helicopters, so it at least kind of sort of works, even if it's not spectacular. I consider the F-84, but its ability to recover from a dive, especially with a full weapons load, is fairly poor, and honestly that's kind of a deal breaker for me when selecting CAS planes, so I don't generally use the F-84, even though it's not strictly speaking bad. So we're starting out in the Somwa SM, and for ammo load I have 20 solid shot and 2 high explosives. The 2 high explosives are for when I run into open topped. The Somwa SM doesn't have the greatest options in terms of ammo. This is probably about as good as you'll do, and as you're going to see when we go into this game, these French autoloaders don't really have the capacity to use a ton of ammo anyway, so 22 is probably about fine. Now the problem with that engagement should be pretty straightforward. While we did knock out the cannon breach on the T-44, we didn't really have a good way to pursue it, and we left way too many sight lines open without the ability to cover all of them. I really should have gone behind the building to the left and narrowed the amount of lines of sight I would have had to cover. That would have helped me out a lot in that encounter, not just getting randomly hit from a random angle, but that's on me, that was just a mistake. Now I respawned specifically in the AMX 50 because this is a much more brawly map, and the 2 light tanks don't do as well in this kind of situation, whereas while the AMX 50 doesn't have great armor, it has good enough armor to often survive hits, and that's at least more than I can say for things like the AMX 13 and the EBR, on top of the fact that it has a really good reverse gear as well, so it makes for a pretty good brawler. In terms of ammo loadout, we're running basically the same ammo as the Somwa for basically the same reason. A lot of these French autoloaders really don't have access to a ton of different types of ammo. It turns out those flimsy little buildings won't actually stop a shell, especially if you're running something like a solid shot. I was kind of hoping to get the magazine on the King Tiger, but a teammate did finish it off basically right away, so nice little assist. Okay, so we got the commander, the loader, the horizontal turret drive, and the engine in the first shot. The Tiger II is basically dead. Except despite putting multiple rounds into the driver's face, we didn't knock out the driver. It looked like the radio was absorbing a lot of the shrapnel. I'm not really sure what's happening there. I've never had that problem with the solid shot before, even though solid shot can be a little inconsistent. So that whole fight just ended up wasting way too much ammo, and that's about to come and bite us in the butt real quick. And we're out of ammo. Now that's kind of on me because I should have basically known that you can't kill an IS-4M from the front, just knocked out the barrel and gone for a flanking play, which by the way, super fun to have tanks you can't frontally hurt. Love that game design. Anyway, that's entirely my mistake, and now we're effectively single loading rounds into the magazine to immediately go into the chamber, which is a very bad spot to be in because it significantly inhibits our reload. Saw our teammates were struggling with the G6, so we finished it off. I'm not entirely happy staying at 0 rounds, but our team is kind of desperate and we really need to get kills where we can at this point, even if it means we're taking a really long time in between our own individual shells. As a note, if we had a friendly capture point, this is normally where I'd pull back to the capture point, because the capture point will throw rounds directly into your magazine, which is super helpful, but obviously this is a single cap map, so we don't have that option. So trying to flank the IS-4M, I end up accidentally flanking a KV-2, and you can see me hesitate for a minute where I'm about to shoot behind the driver, and then I kind of remember I have solid shot, so I aim beneath the turret, which should theoretically knock out most if not all of the crew, or hit ammo, and somehow it doesn't hit any of the crew but causes a fuel explosion. It's the right result, but it's a very weird way to arrive at it. But anyway, all's well that ends well, I guess, on that one. So whenever you hear me say when I'm reviewing a vehicle that mobility has no effective hard counters, this is the type of situation that we're looking at. In this scenario, the IS-4M has basically no way to get a shot on me if I don't allow them to get a shot. My vehicle is lighter, faster, accelerates much faster both in forward and reverse, so he can't really do anything, and he ends up accidentally putting himself between me and my team, so my team just shoots him in the back. The IS-4M should have realized very early that he was never going to get the shot if I didn't allow it, and put the building between him and my team, so he at least isn't getting shot from two completely different directions at the same time. And that's what I was talking about with the AMX-50's armor. It can sometimes bounce shells, although it's not terribly consistent about it. Now you notice with King Tiger, obviously we shot the right hand side of the turret first. We're trying to go for the ammo rack through the turret face, which does sometimes happen. However, it didn't in this case, but we did knock out his breach and his gunner and commander, which is always nice, except now we have the JPZ-45, so we have to waste the last round at our magazine killing the JPZ and leave the King Tiger left alive and just kind of retreat for a minute. The King Tiger didn't try to retreat to repair, it just tried to repair in place, which of course left the back of its turret and the ammo magazine in it completely exposed, so as soon as we had a round ready, we were able to finish off pretty easily. Now at this point I realize I have enemies at my spawn, and also we kind of need to take the capture point. I opt to go for relieving the spawn pressure by eliminating the enemies there, hoping that my teammates might be able to provide at least some support if I go to point, because if I go to point now, even if I get there, I don't have a lot of ammo and I'm very vulnerable to getting surrounded and taken out. That being said, I'm not 100% sure this was the correct call, so if you think this was the wrong call and I should have just gone to point, let me know in the comments down below. It is getting pretty close on tickets. I have absolutely no clue how that first shot only got the breach and the track, given that it went basically in one side and out the other of that IS-2, and the turret is pretty cramped. It feels like that should have been a one shot, but this is just one of those solid shot games where you just have to hit every enemy one more time than you really want to. then again, one more shot than I really wanted to in that fight as well. It's just kind of a theme with this particular game, I guess. At least the AMX-50 is mostly immune to autocannons around this battle rating though. T-44 hit our track, and of course the T-44 has ammo in the back of the turret, which acts as a bit of a backboard if you have something like solid shot, so they're not that hard to kill just by hitting the left or right side of the turret, and even if it doesn't kill, shots like that also normally take out the breach. With our track out, our magazine empty, and no more solid shot, all we can really do is watch the tickets tick down as our team slowly loses. Our team doesn't manage to get on point. I'm not really sure if it was the right idea to flank around the point and try to free up pressure, but then again, I'm not really sure YOLOing it right in would have gone significantly better. At the end of the day, the flank is one of those, it could have worked really well if there hadn't been two separate enemies, one of which tracked us, but it is what it is. There's not really anything you can do about situations like this. Ultimately, I'm not really sure how winnable that game was. Obviously, we kind of threw away the Somwa SM spawn very early on, and that hurt us a bit. Additionally, having to burn so many shots on the King Tiger and then wasting 3 shots on the IS-4M also hurt us a fair bit. I definitely could have played better, but I'm not actually convinced based on our team's performance it would have made all that much of a difference in the grand scheme of things. But of course, let me know in the comments down below. Do you think this was a winnable game and the mistakes doomed it, or do you think this was just kind of one of those games we were destined to lose and the best we could hope for was to get a bunch of kills along the way? As always, if you liked the video, please leave a like and subscribe. That always helps out the channel. As always, danke bitte, tschüss.